everybody. My name is Mike Wilson. I am one of the co-founders of Pediacam. I am also an ENT physician and a father of 2 children, which will help you understand why we at Pediacam are using machine learning to automate the diagnosis of ear infections. Any parent can tell you the pain of an ear infection. Your kid is irritable, inconsolable, maybe tugging at his ear, maybe he has a fever. Your question is this a normal fever, like a cold, a common cold, or is this an ear infection? With one of those, you have to wait it out. With the other, your kid can get better faster with antibiotics. Currently, the only way to know which of those 2 it is a costly, inconvenient trip to your pediatrician's office. So you hem and haw for a few days. You say, oh, maybe he'll get better on his own. Eventually, he doesn't, so you truck him to the pediatrician's office. At which point, you have 2 outcomes. 1, it's a cold, and you just wasted your time and money. 2, it's an ear infection, and you feel like a terrible parent because you didn't diagnose it earlier. This is an extremely common scenario. So nearly every child has issues with ear infections. 40% of kids have 6 or more by the time they're 7. It's the -1 reason for going to a pediatrician. We think that the solution to this is Pediacam. It is a smartphone-connected otoscope that allows parents to take a picture of their kid's eardrum from home and then uses machine learning to automate that diagnosis of ear infection. With this low-cost home diagnosis option, we're not only saving the parents that expensive pediatrician visit and the inconvenience, we're also saving them all the anxiety that you get before and around the ear infection. Do I take my kid in? Is this an ear infection? Am I going to get burned again? We're removing all that with just a little check from home. We think that ear infections is a perfect starting point for mobile AI diagnostics. The diagnosis itself is very straightforward. It's also completely visual. So as a doctor, I don't need to see you. All I need is this picture and your history, and I can diagnose you with an ear infection, which allows us to do the entire clinical encounter start to finish from remotely, and we save the whole need for that pediatrician visit. That's also our competitive advantage. With licensed physician co-founders, we are able to launch initially with a telemedicine model where initially the diagnosis is provided by us. That allows us to do a couple of things. One is to launch early before the AI would otherwise be ready and start to accumulate a user base. And also that user base allows us to accumulate organically the data that we're going to need. These parents are sending us their pictures. We collect those pictures and use them to train our AI algorithm. Once the algorithm is predictive, we flip the switch and get the automated diagnosis. We're the right team for this. I'm an ENT surgeon, and as well as Justin, who's a UCSF orthopedic surgeon. And between the 2 of us, we have the breadth of kind of clinical experience to know which problems are worth solving with this new AI machine learning diagnostic technology. And then Victor is our kind of superstar UC Berkeley student who's been doing our mobile dev and our machine learning. Our market is large. It's essentially every household with children. But we think our initial target market is those households that have kids who have frequent ear infections, those 40% of kids. And that's 12 million households. Our revenue model is that of direct consumer sales of hardware and then an annual subscription model. With just 25% of that frequent ear infection market, we can attain $100 million in annual recurring revenue. We have made a lot of progress. We have a functional prototype that provides parents with a preliminary machine learning diagnosis and then also the telemedicine kind of official diagnosis that we provide. We are in the early stages of beta testing and have some really positive reviews from early testers who say things like, you can't understand how much this changes your life until you've actually used it. And we think this is just the beginning. We think there's a host of diagnoses that you can automate using a smartphone and machine learning. Strep throat is our next target. It's the second most common reason for a pediatrician visit. We think we can automate that. Things like skin rashes and broken bones, asthma, COPD. We think we can automate all these. We are raising an initial round of $300,000 to reach our first 10,000 customers. With your help, we can use machine learning to bring physician-level diagnosis to the smartphone and make healthcare more affordable and more accessible for everybody. Thank you.
I think it's a great product. How do you handle prescriptions, and are you thinking about adding that to the business, assuming you're allowed to do it, where you can deliver the prescription and just make it even easier for the parent?
Yeah, so we think that's a core part of the value proposition, ultimately, is to provide the prescription. So yes, we will be doing it. It adds a bunch of complexity. It's definitely allowed, but you have to have licenses in each state, and you have to have a network of physicians to do it. So it is part of what we would be developing with initial investment. But we do think it's a core part of our value proposition and intend to offer it.
Why don't you think this exists already? And related to that, how do you think about protecting your IP here? So, P&G can't come in and create the same thing.
Right. So with the advent of smartphones and kind of the commoditization of their components, including digital cameras, these are so cheap. I mean, this camera for us is $12 cost, right? So that allows a different target market, right? You can sell directly to parents if your camera costs $12. So I think that's why now, and as well as the recent advances in machine learning. When it comes to IP, the consensus seems to be in the machine learning space. It's still in progress, but it seems to be that the IP that most people are protecting is the actual data itself that you train the algorithms on, because they are not actually patentable, right? And so our strategy would be to first to market and obtain the largest, through this kind of organic accumulation of data, have the largest database of otoscopy.
Are you concerned about liabilities at all?
About
False
what?
positives, false negatives?
Liabilities?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? So ear infections is the perfect first step, because you miss an ear infection and the kid actually gets better anyway. It just takes a couple of more days. Rarely you can have kind of bad complications, but you actually, one of the accepted treatments in the algorithms that are now, like the guidelines that are now for physicians, is observation. So you can offer observation with close follow-up, which initially sounds like a negative for us, but it's actually, we have a very convenient way of providing very close follow-up. So I think it actually plays into our business model.
So have you considered the FDA considerations behind using software to diagnose?
Yeah, so initially we don't have to worry about that because we're doing a telemedicine model, and I can diagnose whatever I feel comfortable diagnosing as a doctor. Long term, we do want to automate this, and so that does require FDA approval. There are predicate analogies out there. There's an EKG machine that offers kind of a preliminary diagnosis. There's also a lot of movement in that space. Like actually really recently, within the last week, there was approval of an AI algorithm that diagnoses diabetic retinopathy. So these things are coming, and the FDA has shown some very pro-technology stances on these types of questions. So, thank you.